May 11th, 2017. My name is Bill McCamley. I am a state representative from Las Cruces and Mesilla here in New Mexico. This is your legislative update for the day, and today was quite eventful. So the first thing to talk about is that the state Supreme Court has refused to, as of now, entertain a lawsuit by the state legislature that had argued that Governor Martinez's vetoes of all of the legislature and all of higher education was unconstitutional, and basically their reasoning was that the legislature has the ability to overturn a veto if they want, and they said the time is not quote-unquote ripe, so they just didn't want to make a decision on it, which means that the special session coming up on May 24th will be important, and it means that there has to be an agreement at some point on a funding and revenue package, because remember, the state is in a budget shortfall right now, to fund the universities and the legislature. And if we don't do this, then either the legislature doesn't get funded and the universities don't get funded, and both systems as we know it basically cease to exist. This is going to be very difficult, as we don't have enough money to fully fund all of our institutions, and the Democrats in the legislature have been agreeing with cuts to state projects like education and roads and social workers and everything for the past couple of years, and we don't want to do that anymore. We've proposed some pretty rational funding increases that even a group like the Las Cruces Chamber of Commerce is in support of, and the governor has basically clung to this no new taxes pledge. She has said, however, that she is willing to look at some of these as long as they're done in the shape of overall tax reform. Now, I've talked about this pretty regularly on these videos, and there was a reform video I did in January where we're talking about what we're trying to do. You're trying to get rid of a bunch of different tax carve-outs for all sorts of things all over the place, but when you do that, you can hopefully lower the rate of the GRT that is currently in place, and that is here in Cruces about 8.2%, which is really, really high. And it is a good thing to try to do this, but there's a couple of real problems moving forward. The first is to do a very, very complicated thing like that in a 1 or 2 day special session is dangerous, and doing things at the last minute a lot of times gets you unintended consequences. For instance, in 2013 there was a tax reform bill passed that basically lowered corporate income taxes and lowered taxes on manufacturers. And a lot of this was done in general to increase jobs in the state. That hasn't happened, but it was also specifically targeted at the Intel facility in Rio Rancho. That hasn't really worked. Rio Rancho has still felt a lot of job losses as Intel has decided to continue to scale back on that. So we've lost a bunch of revenue. We haven't created jobs. The Intel plant hasn't really been saved at all, and everybody lost. And so going forward with a huge complex plan is a real hard issue. Another problem with that is the bill that she really likes was introduced by Jason Harper. It was called House Bill 412 last year. And the overall concept of it, I agree with it, and I actually voted yes for it on the House floor, but it was so complicated, and I wasn't on the committee. I actually missed something in the bill, and that thing was that it basically raised income taxes on the poor to 5%, which is what most people pay for, but poor people pay less, and lowered corporate rates to 5%. So it basically did a bait and switch where you lowered taxes on the wealthy and raise taxes on the poor, and I and a lot of the other Democrats missed that because it was such a huge comprehensive thing, and we voted on it probably too quickly. And if we do something like that moving forward, where we only have a day, that creates a lot of other problems. The last thing I want to talk about is the governor just last night said that she was okay with a food tax as part of this overall tax reform package, and there's a lot of people that academically argue for a food tax, and I actually worked on exploring the possibility of this all throughout the fall and finding some ways of getting over the regressivity of a food tax. Food taxes generally are more burdensome on people at the lower end of the income spectrum, on the poor people, than they are those at the top, and we looked at ways to try to do that. Weren't really able to make it work, and the governor herself has been very against a food tax for years now. She's been quoted over and over as say she wouldn't support one. Now she said she is going to vote for one, and I just want to let people know on the Democrat side in the House of Representatives, that thing is dead on arrival. The food tax will not get out. The votes are not there. as I know it right now, and there's a couple reasons for that. First off, it is another tax on the poor. It's really hard to get those regressivity measures where you try to find ways of making that up to poor people to work, and there's not a lot of trust with the governor. So there was a food tax passed in 2010. The governor at the time, Bill Richardson, vetoed it. And there's a really worry now that for political reasons, basically, the governor could say, oh yeah, I'd consider a food tax, and then all the Democrats vote on it, and she vetoes and says, I am going to protect all the poor people by vetoing this bill, because a food tax is extremely unpopular. So for those reasons, I don't think that I'm not going to support it, and I don't think that there's a lot of other folks that will as well. So thanks for watching this. Appreciate everybody's attention, and if you have questions, comments, or concerns on these or any other issues, love to try to answer them for you, and hope everyone has a good day. Bye.